Hello, Spartans. My name is Dave Isbell, and I am the Assistant Director of Alumni Professional Enrichment in the MSU Alumni Association. It's my great honor to welcome you to today's presentation, Achieving Goals Through the Power of Three. Before I introduce you to our presenter, I just want to point out to you the chat window on the left side of your screen. This is where you'll be able to type your questions, which we'll be sure to answer by the end of the presentation. Also, all of our webinars are recorded and can be found at SpartansHelpingSpartans.com. For information about upcoming webinars and other events, please visit us at alumni.msu.edu/LENS or LENS. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce to you today's presenter, Lisa Dietlin. Lisa is President and CEO of Lisa M. Dietlin and Associates, Inc., where she serves her clients as a philanthropic agent, assisting entrepreneurial individuals and nonprofit organizations in developing transformational philanthropic strategies. Lisa is a much sought-after guest for many television and radio programs, and she is a regular contributor to the Huffington Post via her blog titled Making a Difference, The World of Giving. She's authored 5 books, including the Making a Difference trilogy, Transformational Philanthropy, Entrepreneurs and Nonprofits, and The Power of Three. Her books have been distributed to widespread acclaim, including praise and endorsements from Emmy Award-winning actor Joe Mantegna, best-selling author Stedman Graham, and ACM Award winner Susie Bogus, as well as the leaders of national nonprofits such as Feeding America, the Better Business Bureau, Wise Giving Alliance, and Taproot Foundation. Lisa is also a Spartan. Thank you for being with us today, Lisa, and with that, I'll give you the floor.
Thank you, David, very much. I'm happy to be here, and happy to be here after such an amazing win in the Cotton Bowl. What a wonderful way to start the new year of 2015. And hello to everyone on the webinar live cast today and those who will be participating via the podcast. We're going to spend about the next 45 minutes talking about how to achieve your goals through the power of three, a philosophy that I've employed that has served me well, as well as my clients and others that I've had the great privilege to interface with. What I like to do is always start out with a couple of stories, dive into the detail of the power of three, and then wrap it up and be open to your questions. So feel free to type those questions, and we'll get started here. So as David shared, this seminar is titled "Achieving the Goals Through the Power of Three," based on my latest book, The Power of Three. And this slide shows luck, and so many people have told me I'm lucky. They say, "You are so lucky," when they hear about my life. But what I tell them is it isn't luck. It's actually been a purposeful strategy. And so we'll start with the story. I'm originally from Alpena, Michigan, so if anyone's on the phone from Northeast Michigan or the UP, I lived up there for a while too. Hello, hello, hello. And I had dreams of getting a degree and actually working as a lawyer. And what happened along the way was that I realized too many students were in law school, there'd be too many lawyers, and perhaps I should pursue a different path. So I ended up in politics and doing political fundraising in the state of Michigan. And again, people would say, "You're so lucky with what you get to do." But it was every single day doing something toward my goal, which was to make a difference, to find a way to help others and to make a difference in this world. That kept continuing until I landed at Michigan Tech University. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how the Power of Three came about when I started raising money for Michigan Tech University, because I'd moved from political fundraising to the nonprofit realm. So the who, what, where, when, and why to the book will be told in the next pages through the story, but it all starts at a little university called Michigan Tech University. There are 3 areas that the book is divided into. There are 10 chapters. The first 3 chapters I call Setting Your Goals and Dreams. The next 3 chapters, the important 3, and the final 4 is the remaining chapters that help round out how to achieve your goals by simply doing 3 things a day. The first mantra is plan the work and work the plan. I learned this in graduate school, and I thought, gosh, that really is purposeful and meaningful and strategic if you employ it. And so I started adapting a process, and this would be the first tool, as I call it, to put in your toolbox, whereby every single day you plan your work and you work your plan. And what I mean by that is actually putting it in writing. Whether you use an electronic format or you use paper and pen, the idea of detailing your work, what you plan to accomplish on the next day, by writing it down, typing it in an electronic format, really changes your luck, as we'll call it right now. The plan the work the plan is based on this story I heard about someone saying how they were successful. And in the midst of the story, they said, the faintest ink is better than the best memory. And I thought, wow, that is really true. Because how many times haven't we said, oh, I was going to do something, it was so meaningful, and we've forgotten it because we haven't written it down. But planning the work and working the plan is a mantra I learned in graduate school that served me well in fundraising. Now, understand that as a fundraiser, most people really dislike the thought of asking people for money, let alone doing it. I'm one of those rare people that love to jump out of bed in the morning and think, who can I ask for money? Who can I match with an appropriate cause or an appropriate organization or help them achieve their goals of making a difference in the world? So this is what most of our probably to-do lists look like, or our resolution list. If you're a resolution maker on November 1st, we have goals, we have dreams. We are told we have to have the courage to pursue them, that, put a deadline on it. If you want to, learn how to fly an airplane, be a scratch golfer, get a new job, find a boyfriend, lose weight, find a girlfriend, whatever it is. We're told that, you got to have a purpose, you got to have ambition. But then it kind of stops, and we're on January 15th, and probably many of us had our goals and dreams written down or thought about. Maybe we didn't write them down, work the plan. We didn't plan it, and it's like, what happened to them? So, how do we get there? So the Power of Three began by me working at Michigan Tech University. And my boss, I was a fundraiser, and he came in and he dropped this printout of 500 names of alumni on my desk. And he said, you need to call all these people, Lisa. And I said, there's no way I can call 500 people. And he said, yes, you need to call 500 people. This is what your job is, to call and ask for money. And I said, there's no way I can call 500 people. Well, if you know, arguing with your boss usually doesn't work. So I thought, what am I going to do? I have to call these people, and I don't have time to call 500 people. But I realized if I called 3 people a day, Monday through Friday, that would be 15 people a week, that would be 60 people a month, and that would be 780 people a year. I would have actually exceeded my boss's goal by 50% by simply calling 3 people a day. And so that's in fact what I did. I started dividing up the list in 3 and calling. And that doesn't mean I reached the person. That means I might get 2 voicemails and a receptionist. But I was planting the seeds. I was planting the seeds of moving forward through that list so that I could say to him at the end of the year, yes, I actually did call out 500 people. Because you see, in my mind, he was asking me to call all 500 on the same day at the same time. And that isn't what he was doing. Think about any goal that we have, whether it be, I want to find a new job. You're so miserable in your job, you want to find a new job. Well, you want it tomorrow, or you want to lose weight tomorrow, or you want to get in better shape, or you want to buy that house, or whatever your goal or your dream is. And we take it off in too big of a chunks. I actually thought that everybody operated this way because when I left Michigan Tech and moved to Chicago, I took a job with an entrepreneur, and it did not work out. It was one of those things where the first month you knew something was wrong, the second month you knew you'd made a mistake, and if you were like me, at the age I was in my early 30s, the third month you were crying every day on Lakeshore Drive as you drove home, and like, oh my gosh, I just made the worst mistake of my life. And understand, I'd come from Houghton to Chicago, and I'm saying that. So I had bought a condo in Chicago, I had my house in Houghton, and I quit my job. And my parents thought I was crazy. They were in Alpena, and they're like, what are you going to do? And I had a few dollars in the bank, but probably it was April, and I may have enough money to get me to September, but not much further. And I said, that's okay, Mom and Dad, I'm going to find a job. So every day I got up and did 3 things to find a job. Before I could go to the public library to get a free book, because we all are looking for free things when you're unemployed, or walk on the wonderful lakefront here in Chicago, Lake Michigan, or or take a nap and be depressed. Before I could do anything, I had to do three things to find a job. Could be I sent an email to a friend. It could be I read the newspaper to see if there were any want ads, or looked online where jobs in my field are posted, or made a call to a friend to see who they knew. But I had to do three things. Well, in 20 business days, I had 22 interviews, and 28 days later, I had a job by simply doing three things a day. Not completing them, but planting the seeds and moving forward. And here's where it gets tricky. If I missed a day because it was a holiday, it was Memorial Day, or it was something was happening, I had to do 6 the next day. And it really stinks when I miss 2 days, because the third day, Wednesday, I have to do 9 things. And I held myself to that same standard when I was calling through that list of prospective donors at Michigan Tech University. I held to that same standard, that it didn't matter if it was a holiday on a Monday or a Tuesday, that I still had to make those 3 calls. Not necessarily on that day because it was a holiday, but because my goal was to make 15 outreaches to alumni to prospective donors week. My goal in getting a job was to do 15 things a week. Then that gave me Saturday and Sunday off. Some people say to me, well, yeah, but that was a while ago, Lisa. Does it still work? And I said, absolutely. A year ago this time, I was in a terrible place. I had had staff leave. It was the polar vortex. I'd had pipes burst in my house. I'd had my engine go out in my Jeep. Yes, I drive an American car. You name it, it had happened. And I was miserable, to the point where when I finally decided to divulge to a friend that I was having a really tough time, it happened to be Valentine's Day last year. And my friend, when I called her after I'd had dinner with a client, because that was the only day a client could meet, we had dinner, which is not romantic or anything. You're having dinner with a client on Valentine's Day, and I got in my car and I drove. I was driving home, and I called my friend, my bestest friend, and I said to her, "How's it going?" And she started bemoaning all the bad things that had happened to her on Valentine's Day. Basically, that she hadn't gotten any Valentines from her kids, from her grandkids. She was divorced. And when she finally took a breath and she said, "How are you, Lisa?" I took a deep breath and I said, well, I'm kind of having a tough time here today. I'm kind of having a George Bailey moment. And she said, "Who's George Bailey?" And I said, from It's a Wonderful Life. And she said, "Oh, I've never seen that movie. It's too sad." And I go, no, it's not that. It's about, is everything I've done in my life, doesn't matter? Would it have changed anything? I was kind of looking for her to be Clarence, to jump in and say, "Hey, you've had a great life. You're just in a bad spot right now. Everybody's miserable. It's cold. It's this, it's that." And she didn't get it. She started crying about George Bailey and his wife Mary and the kids. And finally I had to say to her, "It's a made-up story." And I had to laugh and thought, okay, you're not going to get any help from your friend, obviously. So start thinking about how are you going to get these things that you're working on fixed. I had 5 things. I had to get new clients. I had to find new staff. I had to lease some office space. I had to get my book, The Power of Three, to the publisher. It had actually been written for a year, but had been sitting on a flash drive. And I was working with the White Sox on a project. I was like, okay, that had been stalled, the Chicago White Sox. And don't hate me, those Detroit Tiger fans. I'm working on a project with them. So I was on my yoga mat, because every day I exercise, because it's the one thing I do every day that just benefits me. And I thought, well, hello, do the Power of Three. So every night I would plan the work. Every night I would plan what 3 things I was going to do to find clients first. What 3 things I was going to do to find staff. What 3 things I was going to do to find people to lease some of the office space I had. What 3 things I was going to do to finish the book. That is now what I'm talking about. And what 3 things was I going to do to get the White Sox project moving. It had been stalled since November, and this was February, March timeframe. So every night I planned the work, and I had 15 things when I walked in. Before I could start my day working on my client work, my speeches, whatever, I had 15 things I had to do. And I kid you not, it took about 45 minutes. to do those 15 things. Because again, I'm planting seeds. I'm not necessarily connecting with people. I'm starting the process. That started around March 1st, and by April 15th, had new clients, had new staff, had office space leased, had the book to the publisher, and then also had the White Sox project moving forward by simply doing 3 things a day. When I would give speeches and presentations to boards, I would tell them this philosophy, do 3 things a day, call 3 donors to boards and staff. And I would see people furiously writing down what I was saying, and they would approach me after and say, I'm going to take this back to my staff, my sales force, my team. Do you have that written down anywhere? And I would sheepishly tell them, as I wrote in the blog, no, because I just thought everybody lived like that. But I found out that's not the case, so that's how the Power of 3 came about. The second thing in the book is about being tenacious. And being tenacious is, I think, an undervalued quality that most people don't realize how important it is. It's sort of based on that Japanese proverb that says, if you fall down 7 times, get up 8. So often when we get one setback, we say, well, it's not worth it. I'm not going to pursue my goal or my dream. But you even think, and let me use the baseball analogy a little bit further. Think about a batter that goes up. They actually get 3 tries. They get 3 tries at one bat, but they might have multiple bats during the game. Just not one and done. They might strike out every single time they're up, except the last swing of the last pitch of a full count, and hit the ball out of the ballpark and win. How many of us didn't think Michigan State was not going to win the Cotton Bowl? I left. I went to a party, and by the time I got to the party, when I left, I think it was like, 32-21 or something, and I left where I was staying in St. Louis, and I went to the party, and it was 1 minute left, and I was like, oh my gosh, what happened? They didn't give up on their dream. They didn't give up on their goal of winning the Cotton Bowl. The football team didn't. But they were tenacious. They stuck with it. They stuck with it the whole time. So a friend of mine, Carolyn Gable, in the first book I wrote called Transformational Philanthropy, Entrepreneurs and Nonprofits, she gave me a story, and I thought, gosh, that's so perfect about being tenacious. And she said, I think life is like God, or if you believe in a higher power or being or whatever, that they gives you 1 million lottery tickets, 1 million scratch-off lottery tickets. Think about that. If somebody, some entity, if you believe in a higher power, gives you 1 million scratch-off lottery tickets and actually tells you in there is a winner that will transform your life. Multi-million dollars, riches will come to you. She said, would you give up scratching after 657,432 tickets? Would you say, I'm not going to scratch the 433rd ticket or the 434th ticket? Well, everybody goes, no, I'd keep scratching if I absolutely knew there was a winner in there. And she said, well, that's what life is about. It's about being tenacious. And this is a woman who got pregnant in high school, was a waitress with a bunny tail out at O'Hare Airport, ended up building a trucking company, a distribution hauling company, multiple children, wonderful life, operates at the highest level of authenticity and integrity, and wrote a book called Everything I Needed to Know About Being a CEO I Learned as a Waitress. She said she never gave up on her dream. She was tenacious. She would talk to businessmen when she was serving them about, what made them successful. She learned good customer service. She was tenacious. And she said, I just never gave up on my dream. She tells the story, in Chicago, people go to Lake Geneva. That's their going up north in Wisconsin. And she tells the story about wanting a place on the water. And, she was shown some places by the realtor, but in her mind, she had something much more outlandish or ostentatious or bigger in mind. And she said to the realtor, show me everything you've got. And her home now is, it's an amazing deal how it came through. Wisconsin Power was divesting of properties. This was the CEO's summer home, and she uses it now for her Expect a Miracle Foundation, and it's this amazing home. But she said, when people told me I could never have a home on Lake Geneva, she said, I told them I was going to. And she said, I just kept working at it. It didn't happen the first year, it didn't happen the second year, but the third year it did happen when she was looking. So she was consistently tenacious. And then I think the third thing toward goals and dreams is being authentic, being who you are. You know, you see that phrase, you go into stores and it might be on some sort of poster or a little brick, wood brick or whatever, and it says, be who you are. You're the only one who can. Everyone else is taken. But that is really true, being authentic to you. In the book, I write about the fact that I love ham and cheese sandwiches on white bread with Miracle Whip. And to me, it's like a true confession. It's like saying, bearing part of my underbelly that, I'm not going to go for the portobello mushroom or the, mozzarella caprese sandwich or any of that sort of fancy stuff. If I'm looking for the plain ham and cheese sandwich on white bread with Miracle Whip, that means no lettuce or tomato either. And I tell that story because I travel a lot, and I'm blessed and fortunate that I get to eat in a lot of really nice dining establishments. But one of the things I like doing is making my own lunch. And I was going to a seminar a couple of summers ago. Northwestern University was putting it on, and it was about teaching women how to write better, that women's voices aren't often heard in the press, and I'm always learning and trying to learn. And I had groceries delivered through Peapod to my house, and of course there was a loaf of white bread, there was ham, there was cheddar cheese, and there was Miracle Whip. So I made my sandwich, my little bag of chips, my little apple, whatever, and packed my lunch, and I went to the seminar downtown Chicago. And it was on a Saturday, and they had given a list of restaurants nearby. A lot of them I knew. And there were about 40 of us in the seminar. And when lunch came, everybody left, or so it seemed. And I was the only one in the room. I thought, well, this is really stupid. You could have networked, you could have connected with people, you could have done something, but instead you're sitting in this room all by yourself. But I thought, well, but this is what you really wanted to do. You wanted a ham and cheese sandwich and your little bag of chips. So I went downstairs and I got an iced tea, and I came back, and lo and behold, there was another woman in the room. And we laughed because she had packed her lunch, and we started talking, and she was a reporter on NPR, or she was a reporter on WGN. And she had started a nonprofit, and so we started talking about what each of us do. About 2 weeks after that seminar, she called my office. She was filling in on the afternoon shift on NPR here, WBEZ, and asked if I would come on and do an hour show about philanthropy, which is part of my goal, to bring philanthropy to the forefront of the media. I was thrilled. It was the first time I was on NPR here in Chicago. Loved it, had a ball with her. What's even more interesting is the next day, when I was leaving my office, one of my staff buzzed me. It was early in the morning, and she said, "Do you know anyone named Susan Axelrod?" And I said, no, I don't. It's got to be a telemarketer. But by the time I got outside to the car service, because I was going to a client, and I take a car service so I don't text and drive, because I feel like I'm always a distracted driver, and I want everyone to be safe. So I get in the car. When I was leaving, I said to her, "Is that David Axelrod's wife?" And she goes, no, it's not. She puts her hand over the receiver. No. I get in the car and I text my staff member and I say, if she's talking about an epilepsy foundation, their oldest daughter has epilepsy and they're actively involved in that, it would be her. And my staff member said, oh my God, it is. Susan Axelrod had heard me on NPR because I had eaten a ham and cheese sandwich on white bread with Miracle Whip, because I was authentically who I was, because I'd done what I wanted to do. I met a reporter who filled in on the afternoon shift on NPR, who Susan Axelrod heard me and hired me for the Epilepsy Foundation that she and David run, as well as 2 other contracts came out of that. So I share that story about the idea of really doing what you want to do and being authentic to who you are as a way to achieve your goals and dreams. I got clients, I got exposure to different television and electronic medium forms, and it helped me achieve my goals and dreams. So the next thing is the idea, the important 3. Don't let someone who gave up on their dreams take you out of yours. And when I was at Michigan State, I got to find out who the professor was, but I remember it was my senior year, and it was a psychology or sociology class, and the professor said, when when you think about when you're a kid, he says, and you run up to your uncle or you run up to your aunt and you say, I'm going to be an astronaut, or I'm going to be president of the United States, or, I'm going to drive a fire truck, or whatever it is. And they go, yeah, kid, come back and talk to me in 15 years or 20 years. And he said, we should all say, well, what, so I can be miserable like you? And it was this whole idea of how we communicate and how we share our beliefs in society. But he said, don't give up on your dream. What I learned is the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And when I first heard this, I thought, what in the world is all that about? But it really is about keeping the main thing, what your goal is, the main thing in your life. That the main thing, the primary thing you're doing is to keep that thing you really want primary in your life. And don't give up on your dreams because someone else says they're unachievable. I'm this little girl from Alpena, Michigan, and this small town. My father died when I was 13. He drowned in Montana. My mom moved us back to Alpena. I'd never gone to school there. I had actually gone to school in Montrose, K through 7th grade. My whole life was topsy-turvy. I didn't get to state till I was a junior. I went to a community college for 2 years, and my dream was to change the world. And I thought I was going to do it through politics, but I do it through philanthropy. And I appear on television, and I write books, and I do all these wonderful things. But along the way, a lot of people said to me, that's never going to happen to you. You can't do that because of where I'd come from or my circumstances. But I kept my eye on the goal, which was to keep making a difference. So the important three, what I call it, the next 3 chapters in the book, are about following up in all situations, networking, and making a difference. I think a lot of times dreams don't come true because we don't follow up when somebody suggests that we could. I have a friend who is miserable in her job and speaks to groups of 1,000, 2,000 people and is an amazing storyteller. She actually is a DEA agent and this blonde bombshell that goes into private airports with her team, and they kick butt and take names of drug smuggling and arms smuggling, and you would never know it if you looked at her, how disarming she is. But she has some amazing stories to tell, and she was on a plane and seated next to this man who runs a major publication, a well-known one if I said it, and he said to her after talking to her, well, here's my card, call me, and I'll, let's get some of your stories published. My friend is too scared to call him. Oh, he was just being nice. Oh, he didn't really mean it. Oh, that could never happen. And I was like, wait a minute, he's saying something. he's giving you a door. Whether he publishes it or not, he operates in that world. Follow up in all situations. You never know where it's going to go. And it is about being tenacious. Sometimes contracts that I end up getting take 2-3 years to actually land, but it's following up. It's being tenacious. Yesterday, I got an email last night from someone who I had been introduced to in July. And as a matter of fact, the person who introduced us, who is a Michigan State alumnus, he and I were just talking about him. I said, whatever happened to him? He kind of went away. He goes, I don't know, maybe this or that's happening with his business. And lo and behold, last night I get an email from him. A lot of us would write back an email and say, hey, you know what? Too little, too late. And I didn't. I said, hey, it is really great to hear from you. As a matter of fact, we were just talking about you and hoping everything was okay. To answer your question, I don't do that. He was asking me about doing some contract work and grant writing. I said, I don't do that, but let me put my thinking cap on and I'll get back to you. Following up in all situations, not letting your ego or your emotions get in the way, and actually staying focused on what you want to achieve will help you get closer to your dream. The next thing I always like to talk about is networking, because I actually disliked it when people told me, oh my gosh, you're such a great networker, because I had had really bad experiences with networking. Networking to me was people showing up and shoving business cards at me at a NABO, a National Association of Women Business Owners, luncheon without ever having a discussion. And I was like, wait a minute. Let's have a discussion. And I remember the first time we did that was because I'd forgotten to put extra business cards in my purse, so I had a limited number, and I was like, okay, I'm not prepared, but I'm going to go into this, so I'm going to be judicious with my cards. I'm going to have conversations with people. And I found that people just at the table of 10 were like, well, let's just all hand out our cards. I'm like, well, can we have conversations about where there are connections? And I always just had a negative feeling because it seemed like it was more scattershot than rifle approach. That's from northern Michigan, hunters up there. Anyways, the key to it all, I think, is listening. We really don't listen when we're talking to people. We are so busy and so anxious to get our story out, we don't listen to them to hear about how we could help them. We want to network forward, but we're not willing to have somebody network with us. And so, what I challenge people to do when they're following the Power of Three is actually start thinking about how you can help somebody else out. The story I shared about being authentic, when I was sitting in that room eating the lunch, the reporter was telling me about the nonprofit she had started and the challenges they were having. So we just had a conversation. I was like, well, here's what you could think, or how about this is what you think about, or here's why you're being challenged in this area because you're looking at this, that. It was sharing. It was being more interested in helping her in her networking with me than me saying, oh gosh, good, I met a reporter, I'm going to be on WGN. As a matter of fact, to date, that reporter has never had me on WGN or never interviewed me on WGN. But when she had an opportunity on NPR, she thought about me. And then it came back. It wasn't about me doing something in the hopes that I would get something from her. I really wanted to help her with her nonprofit because it's about end of life decisions. We all know Jack Kevorkian if we lived in Michigan for any period of time, and it's about having those tough conversations about end of life issues. And having lost a parent when I was 13 and thinking about my mom, thinking like, okay, this is really tough. A lot of people are going through these end of life issues, and how do we prepare them? And this is a great nonprofit. But being more focused on helping her solve her problems networking wise than being focused on my situation and my communicating what I needed. So the key is listening. Networking is not a dirty word. The key is listening, being more interested in someone else's story than in telling your own story. Then the third thing in the important three is do something every day that makes a difference to someone else. Get out of yourself. Do something kind for someone else. I think this goes so far that most people don't realize that when I interviewed the entrepreneurs around the country and in Canada about why they give away money, one of the things they said is the more money they gave away, the more money they made. In other words, the more they did something for someone else, the more it came back to them. That was my first introduction to this theme. But I would hear a lot of pushback from people when I'd say, oh, do something that makes a difference, you'll feel better. And I don't have money, I don't have time, I don't have whatever it was. And I'm so focused on getting a job. I'm so miserable where I am. I can't get out of my own head. So I was thinking and pondering, how does this fit in when somebody is in that situation, so overwhelmed, depressed, not able to get toward their goals and thinking, now I got to help somebody else? And then I went kayaking. I went kayaking on the Chicago River, and I, again, was helping a friend. Her daughter was in Chicago, and the father was having surgery. So I said, well, let's go kayaking. And I had never kayaked before in my life, and I was the old lady on the trip. At a ripe old age of, I think I was 49 at the time. And so when we had turned, we went down to Chinatown and we were turning and coming back up the river, the Chicago River. The guide, the host of the kayaking trip, slowed down to talk to me. He was an engineer. He'd gone to the University of Illinois. His name was William, and he worked for the city of Chicago. He was 26 years old, and he was miserable. He was miserable in his job. So he asked me what I did. And so I was telling him, help people do philanthropy better, because here's another little tool. You ought to be able to describe what you do in 6 words or less. When somebody asks you what your goal is or what you want to do, see if you can put it in 6 words or less. Mine is, we help people do philanthropy better. Think if you can do that. So we were talking, William and I were talking, and he said, "Oh my gosh," he said, "I have to tell you about my roommate." He said, "My roommate doesn't have a lot of money, and he doesn't have a lot of time, but every single day he smiles at people and acknowledges people all day long. And the reason he does it is because he read a story about research that had been done that found out that the number one reason people who are contemplating suicide do not commit suicide is because someone said hello to them, someone smiled at them, someone acknowledged them." And he said, "My roommate says every night when I go to bed, I'm pretty sure I saved a life because I smiled at people today and I acknowledged them." And I laugh when I tell the story because my growing up in northern Michigan, my mom's sister married a man named Isidore Aloysius Vicarius, a good Polish man, and I realized that Uncle Izzy had it right a long time ago. When we would drive with him in his brown pickup truck on the country roads, every car that went by, Uncle Isidore raised his hand and he waved and he smiled. And we would always say to him, "Uncle Izzy, do you know him?" And he'd say, "No." And curious as a kid, like, why are you waving at people you don't know? But when William told me the story about his roommate, I thought, you know what? Uncle Izzy got it years ago, and we didn't even know that. He was probably saving lives and acknowledging people. So there's lots you can do to make a difference in someone else's life. You can hold open a door. You can, pay it forward by buying someone's coffee. You can write a note. Every day I try to do 3 things that make a difference to someone else. Every day I try to write a personal piece of correspondence. We don't send letters anymore. When was the last time you got a letter or a note? And emails get lost. If your email inbox looks like mine, they get lost. Take time to write a note to somebody. Write a note of congratulations. Write a note of sympathy. Write a note and send it to someone. That really makes a difference. 2 is I try to pay someone a compliment every day, a genuine compliment that will make a difference in their life. And the 3rd thing I do is I pick up a piece of garbage every day. I'm a walker, and I am always seeing litter on the ground, and I pick up a piece of trash and put it in the proper receptacle because I remember that commercial in the 70s with the Native American walking through the litter and the tear coming down his cheek. And those 3 things I do every day. If I can do nothing else, if I can't write a check, if I can't volunteer time because I'm so busy, I do those 3 things every single day and hope that that makes a difference to someone else. But a couple other ideas I have is if you're going to the post office and you buy a book of stamps, buy another one for your favorite nonprofit and give it to them. If you're a small business owner and you're buying a box with reams of paper in it, buy an extra box and ship it to your favorite nonprofit organization. Watch somebody's kids if they're having a tough time. Go and sit with somebody having chemo. Sometimes dreams and goals are achieved in the most unexpected, unanticipated ways because you're doing something to help someone else. I ended up on television because I had lunch with a former colleague from the University of Illinois at Chicago who had started working at a nonprofit. We had both worked at the university, but she was on policy, not fundraising, and she needed help. She didn't know what she was doing, and so she said to me, "Can I buy you lunch?" I said, "Sure." So we went to the Smiling Joe's on Western off of Irving Park off of Western, and had a sloppy Joe and French fries. And she was telling me what was going on, so I told her what I would do if I were in her shoes. And then she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I got this idea, the nonprofit sector is the 3rd largest employment sector after retail and manufacturing, blah, blah, blah. I want to be on TV." And she goes, "Oh, I know someone." And a week later, she had introduced me to the person she knew. And the day after that, the film crew was in my office, and we filmed the first interview. Never know where it's going to come from. I was doing something to help her that ended up helping me. This phrase is one that always got me when my very first boss told me, he goes, "Well, don't work harder, Lisa, work smarter." I'm like, what the heck does that mean? I was so frustrated with them, but now it's become a mantra that I really adapt and I share often with my staff. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's really about being smarter about how you work, and that's where the final four comes in. The being smarter. Being smart, we always know this. Now, always being prepared. Um, so, always being prepared is having your business cards. Just like I said when I went to that networking event, part of the reason why I didn't want to give out business cards is because I had a limited number. But it is always being prepared and having your business cards, being ready to have that conversation, realizing when opportunities knocking at your door. In the book, I tell a story about going to a bakery for pies, and while I was ready to buy pies, I didn't have a business card, I didn't have my phone, I didn't have a pen. Somebody in the line, because it's a great pie place, Who's Your Mama, like Hoosiers of Indiana, Who's Your Mama Pie Company. We were all ready to buy pies, and this guy said, hey, but I need help. We were talking about what we did in nonprofits, and he took down my number or email address, but obviously took it down wrong because it ended up being, I've never heard from him. Being true to your word, doing what you say you're going to do. This is a really great way to work smarter, not harder, because people will see that you do what you say and you say what you do. I tell the story in the book about returning a book. But after 11 years, I had borrowed this book, and it sat on my bookshelf, and I'd promised the people when I took it, I would return it, and it took 11 years. But recently it happened. I was doing some work in New Mexico and was staying at a house, and the contract ended abruptly, and I ended up back in Chicago, and some people cleaned out the house of my stuff and shipped it, and it sat in boxes, and then I unpacked it, and the clothes got hung, and then I realized one of the skirts was actually a skirt a friend had loaned me for a nice evening out, that I didn't have a skirt and I needed one. And it took me months, if not a year and a half, to send it to her. And in the end, when she got it, she's like, oh my God, I was looking for that. I didn't know what had happened to it, blah, blah, blah. But it was being true to my word. When I had borrowed it, I said I would give it back. If you tell somebody, you'll write a letter of recommendation. If you tell somebody, you'll make a call on their behalf. If you tell somebody that you will do something for them, I think it's really important to follow through and be true to your word, because that's your reputation. And that's working smarter, not harder. Because working harder is you don't do it and you have to explain why you don't do it. There's a book by Adam Grant. He's out in Pennsylvania, and it's called Give and Take. And it's about a study he did if givers or takers or those who are matchers do better in the world. If givers, takers, or matchers do better. And meaning with their income, with their life happiness, and all of that. And actually the book shows that givers, even those who give to people who can never give back to them, are actually the most successful, the happiest, the wealthiest. Takers are those people that come into our life and always take. The matchers are, I'll only do this much if you do this much back for me. But if you give and you're true to your word, and when you say you're going to do something to help somebody, you really do it and put it on your plan, you're working the plan and planning the work, you really will be amazed at the results and how much closer you get to your dream of your goal and achieving the life that you want. Social media maximized. I went kicking and screaming into social media. I thought that, oh my gosh, I didn't want to put pictures of the dinner I ate last night on Facebook. Oh my gosh, I didn't want to do that. But I realized that, and when my first book came out, my attorney said, you should be on social media. And the contacts I've made, and again, those dormant networks. Adam Grant actually says dormant networks actually bring greater results to you than your active networks. So think about what social media does for many of us. We reconnect with our kindergarten best friend, our college roommate, our first employer. We connect with them. And those are people that perhaps we're not seeing on a day-to-day basis. But once they learn our goal and our dream, they have a whole set of networks that they can employ to help it be achieved. So on social media every day, I try to make 3 connections. 3 connections on Facebook, again, sending that invitation. 3 connections on LinkedIn. Twitter, are there 3 I could follow or posts that I could put up? Trying to work on the number 3. And a lot of people say, why 3? I see a question like the important 2, or why not 4, 5, or 10? 3 is achievable. 1 is not going to move the needle, and 5 seems overwhelming. But 3 is a manageable number. 3 is a number that really adds up because at the end of the week, there's 15 things you've done toward that goal. So if you're trying to connect and you connect with 15 people on Facebook who are in your dormant network, people that you have not been communicating with on a regular basis, that's 15 more people that know your story or that have reconnected with you and that you have an opportunity to tell them your story. Again, keeping the main thing, which is your goal and your dream, in front of you to achieve it. Don't overlook social media, how important social media is. And remember what my first boss told me, don't ever put anything in writing you wouldn't want to see on the front page of the newspaper. I think all of us have seen and wondered, some with aghast, at why people are putting certain things on social media or in emails or in text. Be careful about it because you can really use it to your benefit, but I think we've all seen where it's not been used that way and caused harm. The last thing is the thing, I guess the point that I struggle with every single day, but I know because I wrote about it that it's true and I have to do it. Every day there's something I don't want to do. There's a meeting I don't want to go to, there's a dinner I have to attend, there's something happening that I don't want to do. And it's usually because there's a lot of other things I want to do, and I've got to fit this in, I've got to stop. Like yesterday, I had to stop what I was doing to go to this luncheon, which was lovely, but I had to stop. I walked across the city, go to the luncheon, come back. I was, I really don't want to go. I really don't want to go because it's cutting out my day and I just want to plow through what I'm working at. It was the thing yesterday I most didn't want to do. But when I do it and I'll go to that event, I am always amazed at what happens. It's almost as if the more I don't want to go to it, the more good that comes out of it. Maybe it's low expectations. Maybe it's no anticipation of anything good happening other than me being irritated that I have to do something or interrupts. But the thing I most don't want to do always leads to the most positive results. So I encourage you, instead of avoiding those really difficult things you don't want to do, put them first on your list. Do the hard things first on your list of things to do. But also, do the things you most don't want to do with an open mind that some amazing and unexpected results will happen. I am living proof that, getting up early in the morning and doing something, or, helping a friend that you think, I don't want to help this friend move, or I don't want to, whatever it is, go and realize that something amazing could happen if you'll only be open to it. And what that means is setting aside that emotion and that angst and anger and just saying, I committed to it, I'm going to do it, I don't want to do it, it's the hard thing I have to do, but I know once I do it, amazing things could happen and be coming out of it that will help me achieve my goals and my dreams. It's actually been a joke around the office because if I'm storming around like, I don't want to go, they go, but amazing things are going to happen. You're going to meet somebody there. You're going to see somebody that's going to be a connection somehow, being open to that opportunity in the world. So doing the thing you most don't want to do. That, friends, Spartans, fellow MSU alumni, and others who are listening, is the power of 3. It's simple. It's easy. I wrote it in the sense that you could pick it up, you could read it in an hour, and you could set down the book and you could say, go. I share the story because I want people to be empowered to say, I can do this. 3 things a day, that seems really, really easy, whether it's to get my health back, to quit smoking, to move to another state, to buy a bigger house, to sell my car, whatever it is. If I'm really purposeful about it and put a plan of action behind it where I'm doing 3 things a day and not giving up and being tenacious and being purposeful, the dream or the goal that I want to achieve can come true. Thank you, and I'll turn it back to you, David.
Thanks, Lisa. I just want to point over to the chat. I invited some folks to share their own stories in the chat, and I just wanted to kind of take a second to read those and kind of get your 2 cents on those, if that's all right.
Okay.
So Javon shares a story on tenacity. I wanted a client but was turned down for years. Here's what the fall down 7 times, get up 8 comes in. I did my annual approach in Viola. I got the contract. Turns out the company they were using for years was because of a friendship, and no one but the friend liked the company. When the friend no longer worked for the company, they severed that relationship. I still have the client today, 13 years later.
I love it. I love it. That is tenacity, Javon. That is tenacity.
So Gallagher writes, in 2010, I made a career move and relocated my family from Michigan to Virginia. Unfortunately, my wife had to leave her dream teaching job. My wife talks to everyone. On our first day in VA, she dropped my son at soccer tryouts. She started chatting with another woman who noticed her Michigan plates. Turns out the woman was a teacher from Michigan who also went to MSU and knew of an opening at her school. I would have stayed in the car eating my ham sandwich and reading. She called her principal and helped her schedule an interview. Since our clothes were still in transit, she went to the interview in a skirt, tank, and flip-flops. Turns out they love teachers from MSU down here. The rest is history, and she has an even better dream teaching job, teaching gifted middle schoolers. She was authentic and networked, and it helped her achieve a goal. Gallagher, that is the Spartan story. Thank you for sharing that.
I love that story.
So Daniel writes, he found the distinction between dormant and active networks to be very helpful. So we've got a couple questions coming in. I'm going to give a couple seconds. I've got a question while I'm while people are typing there. Lisa, you talked a lot about kind of the relational aspect of all those things. I think sometimes think that when I set a goal, it's my goal, but I think you just talked a lot about how you can't accomplish goals in a vacuum. So I have two things for you. And the first, I'm wondering if you can give a few tips to kind of like the shy introverts out there about maybe some conversation starters. Would you mind giving a couple pointers for people on that?
Happy to do that, David. Happy to do that. For the shy, introverted person, I think, the last point about do the thing you most don't want to do, get out of the car, is really important. I just got a book for Christmas that said, do something every day that scares you. So maybe using that as a mantra. But I think one of the things is to begin a conversation. And if you're like the woman was at the soccer practice for a child, if you have children, it's really easy to say, okay, this is the one thing I'm going to do today. I'm going to get out of the car and I'm going to talk to somebody. I'm going to say hello to somebody. Don't think about the whole conversation. Don't get in your head. Think about the person who's sitting by themselves, and maybe you have your lawn chair and you go over and sit next to them and say, hey, how are you? And start talking about them. Don't think so much about, I have to be interesting, I have to have something to share, I have to have something worthwhile. Be more focused on them. We so rarely ask people about themselves. We are so interested in ourselves that we rarely give people the chance to talk about them. And I am always amazed at the stories that people can tell you if you will just take the time to ask the question. So it's not about being shy because you don't know what story you'd tell. It's about having a few good questions to ask people. So, how long have you lived here? Or when did you arrive here? Or where are you from originally? Or where did you, where, I never ask where do you work or where do you go to college, because that can backfire. Somebody could not have gone to college or not be working, but just say, so, where are you at these days is a great opening question. How long have you been sitting here? Or, how did you come to be here? How did you find out about this restaurant? How did you find out about this store? I'm always making friends, and I think that's a way that shy, introverted people, if they can learn to ask questions and be willing to do it at least once a day, it'll keep getting easier. And be listening
Thanks,
to other
Lisa. I love
principles.
that, especially that whole concept of listening. As a shy introvert myself, I love to tell the story of, in the winter, I always wear like a Spartan jacket, and oftentimes in the summer, I have like a Spartan T-shirt on. Um, and sometimes I'll wear T-shirts or like bands or like other things that I like. And You wouldn't believe how many times people will yell "Go Green." The last time I went to Mexico, I was in the airport and people in Texas were yelling "Go Green" to me. I got onto the plane flying into Mexico, and it happened to be a whole group of students that were medical students flying down to do some work in Mexico. And me being the shy introvert, I don't usually open the conversation, but when someone yells "Go Green" at me, I know their appropriate response, and that often opens up the door and it leads to other things. So sometimes it's like as simple as like doing something like a Spartan license plate or something like that. I mean, it opens up the conversation about something that you have in common. And for us shy introverts, like for me, that works. Anyways, I have a second question for you. And thinking about this relational thing, I'm wondering, Lisa, if you have any thoughts on kind of the concept of mentorship for people who are working toward accomplishing a goal. So I mean, I think oftentimes we need somebody that's kind of been there to kind of help us lead us toward the direction we want to go. So I wonder if you have any thoughts about just kind of that topic and how people might be able to kind of approach not maybe a formal mentorship process, but maybe kind of informally drafting mentors or something.
I do. I've just learned about this whole mentorship on a formal level that people are really looking at to advance their careers within companies. So I'm very intrigued by it. But I want to go back to your comment about wearing the Michigan State sweatshirt or T-shirt. I actually, because of the field I work in nonprofits, I'm always getting nonprofit T-shirts, and I actually have made some of the best friends at the gym by wearing my nonprofit T-shirts because they'll know the cause or they'll know the organization, like or or the destination. I remember seeing someone wearing a Sheboygan, Michigan T-shirt in the gym. I'm like, you know where Sheboygan, Michigan is? It turns out she was a sailor. Blah blah blah. The rest is history. Great friends. So T-shirts and logoed apparel wear. I'm going to throw that, David, into my next presentation. Good suggestion there. Um, the mentorships, I absolutely 100% believe that it can lead you by its sheer relationship to your goal and to your achievement. I've had formal relationships where I've had a coach, a life coach, a business coach that holds me accountable. I've been a coach to people, I've been a mentor, and showing up, volunteering, showing up, and having somebody be willing to mentor you if you're between jobs really helps also. I started that program here in my company when someone asked me to mentor them, and I said yes, and they were between jobs. They'd gotten fired between the time they'd asked me and the time we actually met, and they were sure they were going to get another job. But we came up with all these things before the Power of Three was ever written to do, and of course, 4 weeks later, I meet with her, and the wheels have fallen off the wagon because she didn't get the job, she didn't do anything. She sat on the couch and ate ice cream, she said, or whatever. And I said, well, come in and be a volunteer, do something for someone else. That was what I was actually saying to her. Come in, we'll have you work with clients, you'll get exposure. And I kid you not, within about 45 days, her attitude was better, we were mentoring her, and then she had a job. She had a job at a major university fundraising. She just needed a little formal, on an informal basis, but formal schedule because she was here like Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays to be mentored. But I really think that if you're wanting to advance toward a goal or a dream, asking someone who's been there or close to being there, if they would take time with you once a month to talk to you and do your homework, don't waste their time. They're going to ask you to do things, read books, don't make excuses. Do what they ask you to do because they're showing you the best path or the path in the way that they got there, and utilize your mentors and set it up for 3 months or 6 months. Don't say to someone, will you be my mentor for a year? Nobody knows where we're going to be a year from now, but if you would say, for the next 3 months, would you be willing to work with me? I'd love to meet with you once a month formally, like to get some advice and insight and be able to email or text you in between. I think that's a great way to start towards your dreams.
Thank you, Lisa. So at this time, it looks like our time for the discussion is up. I don't see any other questions rolling in. So Lisa, I just want to give you a second just to have any closing thoughts, and then I'll wrap up with a real quick wrap up.
Thanks, David, and thanks to everybody who participated live and the questions and everyone listening. Dreams do come true. they come true every single day. It's about people being purposeful toward what they're doing toward achieving the goal, putting themselves first. You know, one of the best pieces of advice is there's two pieces of advice I want to leave you with. One is when you walk with purpose, you collide with destiny. My good friend Dr. Bertie Berry said that when you walk with purpose, you collide with destiny. And purpose is planning the work and working the plan, keeping the main thing, working smarter, not harder, doing 3 things a day toward your goal, holding yourself accountable to that. If you're walking with that purpose, you're going to collide with where you want to be. You're going to end up there. And the second thing is don't forget to put yourself in a first class seat in your own life. Don't put your goals and dreams on the back burner. Don't say, I'm going to do everything else on my to do list and make this last. Put your goals and dreams, whether it be find a house, lose weight, find a spouse, get a new job, buy a new car, whatever it is. Put that first on your to do list and do 3 things toward it. It's going to take you about 10 to 20 minutes in the morning, and then you got the rest of the day to take a coach seat in your own life. But for the first thing in the morning, put yourself in a first class seat towards your goals. It was great being with you. Go MSU.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I really
Go Green,
appreciate
go.
having you today. For those of you listening still, I just want to thank you for your participation. The Alumni Lens exists to build a portfolio of professionally and personally enriching content and experiences for Spartans around the globe. We're constantly looking for ideas regarding content and experiences that will help Spartans to grow personally and professionally. So, hey, if you have ideas, please shoot us an email, get a hold of us. You can find me at isbald@msu.edu, or you could get a hold of Lisa at lisap@msu.edu. We really want to hear from you, so please reach out to us. Next week, our next webinar will be on managing your career transition. We actually have one. Usually we do this the second and fourth week, but we have a special presentation next week, Thursday the 22nd, on career management. After that, January 29th is What's New in Resumes, LinkedIn, and More. So if you know any job seekers or people who are interested in managing their career better, those are places to point them. As always, we really appreciate you Spartans for being around with us, and thank you so much. Go Green!
Are you still there? David?